It's time to get schooled. Todd O'Neil is a private wealth advisor, chartered financial consultant, and a partner with Cardinal Pointe Financial Group. He has 25 years of experience in the financial planning industry and is going to share some educational expertise with us this morning. Todd, we look forward to having you on the show with us. And it's time to get schooled. So the year's flown by, and you blinked and it's June. But college invoices for the fall semester are typically begin to arrive around the first week in July, and due dates are typically the 1st of August. It's really the time of year right now to begin getting prepared.
Thanks for having me again, Angie. You're right. We're starting to get these calls already, and it's hard to believe, but we're getting calls from people that are saying, hey, in another month or so, I'm going to need a distribution from my education account for my child or for my grandchild. And a lot of this work, and the reason why people are calling us now, a lot of this work was started taking place 15 to 18 years ago. So, typically through the planning process with folks, they'll tell us when, hey, we're having a new addition to the family, or our first child or a grandchild is going to be, joining our family soon. So that always prompts us to have some planning conversations with folks around the various types of education accounts that are out there and the options they have for saving for these expenses in the future.
Okay, so you mentioned that there are various education accounts and that clients have options to choose from. So can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Sure thing. So usually the conversation revolves around one or two types of accounts. I typically start off by talking about what's called a Cardinal education savings account. And then there's also the 529 plan, which seems to get a lot more publicity, and people hear of that plan a lot more. But both of these accounts allow for tax-free growth of your investments as long as you use them for school. There's some differences between the two, but they both allow for that as long as you follow a few basic rules.
So what are the true primary differences, though, between the two?
Great question. So a Coverdell account, it has its own things that we have to pay attention to. Number one, there is a $2,000 annual maximum contribution to that account. That breaks up into $166.67 a month. I've got a lot of people that break it up that way monthly. And also, you have to watch your family's income. If you start to earn too much as a family, this option doesn't become an option any longer. You actually earn your way out of being able to contribute to a Coverdell account. You can also invest. So say someone sends us the check and says, put this in the Coverdell. You can invest that money pretty much any way you want. I have people that send checks and say, hey, buy $2,000 worth of Amazon or Apple computer. So you can buy stocks, mutual funds, bonds, CDs, pretty much anything you want. Now, prior to 2017, the tax overhaul, the Coverdell account was one of the only education accounts that you could actually use from kindergarten all the way through college. So if people are paying for private high school, this was a great way for them to start saving into that plan. Now, to put this into terms, if you're using that for college and you're really diligent about doing your $166.67 a month, by the time the child is born and when they really around 18 or so, it's not uncommon to see $55,000 to $65,000 that's been saved in those plans with very reasonable growth assumptions. It's not enough to pay for college all the way, but it's certainly enough to take the burden and the stress off.
So then the 529 plans that we hear the most about then are a lot different than this. How so?
They are. You can put a whole lot more money into them, so you can contribute up to $15,000 a year into them. So that's per person, for the beneficiary. So I could put in $15,000. My wife could put in $15,000. My neighbor could walk next door, knock on the door, and give me $15,000. Anybody can put that money in for that beneficiary. And you can actually do what they call super fund a 529 plan, where I could put $75,000 a year in 1 year into that child's account. So they have much, much, much higher contribution limits. And again, prior to the tax overhaul of 2017, the 529 plan was only college, period. You had no option to spend it on high school or anything else. So the overhaul has changed that a little bit. Now you can spend $10,000 a year out of a 529 plan if you're going to pay for high school tuition. It's tuition only. It's not the books and all the other miscellaneous stuff. It's for tuition. So that did change the way. So in the past, we said, okay, you're looking for high school, let's go Coverdale. If you're looking for college only, let's go the 529 route. The other option, the other difference between the two is with a 529 plan, it looks a whole lot like your 401k. You have a lineup of investment choices to choose from. You can't just say, I want to buy Amazon stock. You say, okay, well, I want this aggressive mutual fund, or I want this fund that's built for a 2-year-old, or this fund that's more appropriate for a 15-year-old. So the lineup is set for you. And you also have to pay attention to your own state where you live. Your state is going to maybe have some requirements for you to keep in mind. Some states require to use their own plan. Some states don't care. And some states actually give you a tax incentive or a tax credit if you do invest in their own plan. So there are some differences between the two.
So, for example, Kentucky and Indiana, where do they fall?
Kentucky's pretty wide open. If you find a plan that you like, it's most likely that's going to be an option for you in the state of Kentucky. Indiana they're different, and it's really a good thing. They give you a 20% tax credit if you use the Indiana College Choice 529 plan. So if someone was to contribute $1,000 to the child's 529, they'll get $200 credit on that year's taxes. It caps out at $1,000. So to get the maximum credit from Indiana, then you would put in $5,000, you get a 20% credit or $1,000 credit on those year's taxes. So they are different. You have to be mindful of that.
Now, you've mentioned that Coverdale accounts oftentimes won't allow you to save enough to cover the full cost of college, and 529 plans allow for much larger contributions. So can a child actually have both plans?
They can, and it's a great question. They certainly can, and you can contribute to both in the same year if you want to. So I typically start off with the Coverdale account because it's a little more flexible on how you're going to spend it earlier in life and whatnot. And we'll migrate that conversation over to the 529 discussion as parents or grandparents say, well, I want to start saving more than what the Coverdale allows me to. Then we'll migrate over into the 529 conversation at that point. So, this is one of my, and I think I said this about my topic a couple of weeks ago when you and I were talking, but this is one of my favorite topics of planning. It's after 25 years, I've had the conversation with the young parent telling me about the child, or the grandparent telling me about their grandchild or children being born. And we've started the planning work and process with them. I've seen these children grow up and go to school and graduate from school with very little debt or very manageable debt, in some cases zero debt. So it's very rewarding to have seen all that play out. And then me, myself, I actually I'm of age right now where my own daughter is going to be going to college in another year. So I've seen firsthand what planning for that expense can do and how much of a relief it can be if you get on top of it early. And so, I know if this is important to someone, then a lot of times the budget can kind of get in the way. Hey, I don't have the money to do that. I understand. I want to do it. And someday I'm going to get to it. But, I also do a lot of budgeting work with folks. And I see the $200 a month cell phone bills. And I see the $75 a week dining out bills. And I see enormous amounts of money that gets spent on material things that basically depreciate to nothing over time. So if it is something that's important, it's not out of the question that we can't find some wiggle room in there to start saving for this type of a goal.
I appreciate how you bring that into the real world, because you're exactly right. If it's important, you'll find a way. And plus, that smile on your face, Todd, you are passionate about this topic. You can tell that. Now, and I'll ask you to explain the acronyms, but I've heard about the UTMA and the UGMA accounts that have been established for kids. Are these also accounts that can be used for education?
They are, and UTMA and UGMA are they're uniform transfer to minor accounts or uniform gift to minor accounts. And I've seen these be a recommendation for education, but I've also seen them go wrong a little bit. So, in essence, what that is you're gifting money or you're gifting property to an underage child, and there's a custodian overseeing that. So, the intent is that this gift is going to grow over time. And they are tax friendly accounts because the growth gets taxed at the child's tax rate, which most of the time is really low, if not zero. So they do accomplish the tax part of it. The only problem with it is in the state of Kentucky, when that child turns 18, it's theirs. The custodian's gone. Mom and dad have nothing to do with that money anymore. They have no say so over it. Indiana, I believe it's age 21, but that kind of money going to an 18-year-old, I've just seen it go wrong a few times. We'll put it that way.
I can only imagine the stories. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to school us this morning.
Thank you, Angie. I appreciate it.
If you're interested in learning more about how you can work toward achieving your financial goals, contact Todd O'Neil. You can reach him at Cardinal Pointe Financial Group, a private wealth advisory practice of Ameriprise Financial Services, by calling 502-489-6900. Todd looks forward to your call.